Fantasy Sports Coaches, we're going to take you through our top 20 Dynasty Defender rankings for the 2024 season. Welcome back to GameDay Squad's YouTube channel. I have special guest Heff on me today to go through our top 20s, talk a bit of banter, talk about our rankings. Mate, how are you? And are you ready to rip in to this ranking session?
I'm good, mate. I feel more prepared for this one as opposed to our draft we did the other week, more so because spent the last month just ranking players. I think we ranked about 350 players. So, yeah, feeling more on top of this one, that's for sure. Feeling good.
Excellent. Well, I messaged you about your rankings, and I'm like, you probably had them done for a long time now, so I'm sure it was just the old copy and paste. You're ready to go. I put my rankings together this preseason as well. I am ready to go. That's why everyone's here. So I reckon without further ado, we just rip in, mate. Let's pull up our 20 to 16 ranked players right now so everyone can see, and we will talk through them. So as of screen right now, we can see, I'm going to check your rankings, quickly check mine. Let's talk through some. Brayshaw the same, okay. Coleman the same. And then a couple of different names in there. Lloyd, just one position apart. Mate, is there anyone that you wanted to highlight or talk about in this rankings range in particular?
Oh, there's a couple. I feel like Andrew McGrath is perennially underrated. More so in terms of like job security and things like that. Plus, like, he's probably their main distributor off that half-back line now. I know there are a few mouths to feed back there, but I feel like people just don't ever rate him as high as he's sliding in all the mock draft stuff and things like that where I'd be prepared to take him. So he's one. There's another one, the other one that's causing like big discussion and big debate at the moment is Nic Newman. And I've got him ranked quite a bit higher than you. And everyone's kind of like wondering, like, he's 31, surely he regresses this year. Surely there's no way he sustains what he did at the end of last year. But then, like, it seems like everything just tied in with Doherty going up to the wing. And I just don't see that changing this season. I think Doherty is staying in that midfield up on that wing. So that's why I'm probably a bit higher on Nic Newman than most other people are because, yes, 31, but that's not nowhere near a graveyard for a breezy halfback flanker. You know, they can still keep going at that. Like, yeah, so he's another one. Like, I feel like if you're worried about Nic Newman, you've got to be worried about Tom Stewart, and not many people are. So, you know, there's bits and pieces like that. But they're the only two that stand out to me. What do you think? What's your thoughts on the rankings?
Yeah, well, a lot of similarities, of course. We had Keidean Coleman in the same place, and that's someone that I wanted to touch on because, of course, Game Day, Dynasty player. He's 23 years old currently. He only had an average of 88.6 per game last season. He's just a player in the past preseason or two that I think coaches have expected to take a bit of a leap in terms of performance, fantasy output per game, but it just hasn't happened yet. His numbers aren't anything to get out of the chair for, but just for me, he has this similar game to someone like a Sinclair or a Doherty, but it just isn't clicking at the moment with the Lions. He's young, he's a great ball user like those players, and I just think he has the opportunity to grow. So for me, the reason why I think he's ranked at 16, which is a fair ranking, is that it's not going to be this year for me that he's going to take that leap. But I do see a leap coming in the foreseeable future where he will be in people's teams and be a lot more fantasy relevant. So he's entering his 5th season. You know, he's got aspirations to win a flag with the Lions. So I just think at the moment they're locked in on playing a team game. But as time goes on, as some of those older players at the Lions peel off in that roster, I think it's going to be an opportunity for Coleman to step up and finally become the player that I think people have been waiting for him to become.
Yeah, he's a player I picked up in one of our keep leagues in the mid-season draft maybe a couple of years ago when he was returning from injury because he dropped back to the pool. So I've been following him pretty closely for a couple of years now. My main concern with him, and the grand final kind of emphasised this, is... And we've got him ranked the same, so like I kind of do agree with you. I do agree with you in some respects, but then at the same time, I'm not going to be surprised if he just doesn't make that leap this year, or he doesn't become like a top 5 defender or a top 10 defender. He probably reaches that top 10 range, but I'm not sure if he gets up to the likes of someone like we'll ever talk about Nick Dacos or Jack Sinclair or those kind of guys. And the reason for that is purely just because every time a team pays attention to him, he goes missing, really, and I don't think that's due to. Like, I don't think he can outwork players any more than he does. I think he's just rated as that type of player that is so damaging if they don't man up on him that I just think he might struggle to overcome that at times. I think like there'll be games where he goes absolutely off and everyone will be going, told you so, Heff, no worries. But then there'll be games where he gets 50s and 60s because they've marked him as well. And that will flatten his average out to like that kind of between like, 75, maybe 80, 85 if he's lucky type range, just because there'll be such fluctuations in his scoring. Because I think we saw in the grand final, we saw Collingwood just pay no attention to him. And that's what we say. That's what we get when people pay no attention to him. He puts up 100 points and a half. But then people put attention to him. And I've seen him put up 50 points and a half before. I've seen him put up 60 points and a half before and then score 10 points for the remainder of the game because an opposition goes, shit, we need to lock down on him. Round 1 versus Port Adelaide, from memory, he was on about 45 at halftime. And I was just thinking, juicy, 90 coming up here, you always double the halftime score. That's what you're getting. And I think he ended up with 60 or something like that. So, and that was me watching him, eyes on him. He was standing right in front of me all day. And yeah, as soon as a team goes, he's damaging us, let's lock him down, he's just so easily locked down. That's my concern. But I do think the potential is there for some massive scoring as well. When teams don't lock him down, it's going to be opposition dependent.
Yeah, definitely. And like 88 in consideration for game day is quite low. Like that's not even cracking your top 15 at the moment. So I think it's a good point. Will he ever become a top 6, top 7 defender, be a 7 forget in your lineup? Probably not. But I do think there's another gear for him to get to. But we'll see how far that can actually go.
Yeah, I'm thinking right now, like he becomes like, those players like Brodie Smith who are like around the mark, but like never quite in that top 10 range. Like I reckon he might end up being like, I'm just trying to think of someone else, like like that kind of range where you're not quite there but like you're always in the conversation, you know what I mean? That's my gut feel, but I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt for now and placing him up there.
Love it, mate. Well, I think that sets our 20 to 16 very, very well. I reckon let's move on. I want to see your next set of range. I know you want to see mine. We'll go 15 to 11. We'll pull them up on screen right now. Similar again, but we have players just ranked in different positions, in all honesty. I've got Short in this list. You don't, so I'm assuming he comes later. That's exciting.
I can't remember what I've done with Short, but I think you're right. But upon what, like, because I did these like last week, upon watching, we won't talk about Short too much now, but upon watching Richmond, that might change a little bit for me. But for me, I guess I talked about Nic Newman. Like, I know this is like, we're talking dynasty and stuff like that, but like even in a dynasty, like I've won, in my current dynasty, I've won, I think 2 or 3 flags in it. And I don't think I've picked a rookie, like a first year player with my first round pick for a good 3 or 4 years. Like last year, Ed Richards was available at my number 1 pick and I took him there. I think a few years ago, there's always just some like senior body. I think I took Ben Keys when he was like when he averaged 100 that year. I was averaging 100 for that mid period. Like I take players like them over taking rookies because I find it so much easier to predict the now, obviously, to predict the next year than it is to predict the next 3 or 4 or 5 years type thing. So like that's why someone like Nic Newman like would slide for most people because of age, and Tom Stewart probably as well. But like for me, I just don't care. Like I'm in it to win it type thing. I feel like you can do enough trading and wheeling and dealing, or like in my dynasty league that's been going for about 5 or 6 years now. And like, I'm not changing my strategy until it stops working, Like, I'm not picking up kids. Like, I'm just going to keep going. I think I lied. There's one regret I had with it. I picked Errol Golden with my first round pick 3 or 4 years ago because he slid to like 7th or 8th in the draft, and I was really hot on him. And I was like, no, that's where I think I finished the 2nd or 3rd that year. And that's where I picked him up. But by the end of the year, I traded him for Patrick Dangerfield, because Errol Golden got injured in his first season. Patrick Dangerfield was averaging 90 as a forward. I needed a forward, and I just did it and I won the flag that year. So like, I'm always making moves like that. So just kind of a bit of a preface, I guess, for my rankings. Like, I know you said pick him as dynasty, but I often just pick him like as I see it. With a slight emphasis on age, but I need to be super confident before I put someone higher purely on age. You know what I mean? But anyway, having a look at some of these rankings. I think what's interesting, I reckon Lachie Ash is a big mover, I think, this season, going to be.
Yes.
So I reckon we saw it there last year, exclusively pretty much played midfield towards the end of the year. Started getting a lot of centre bounce tendencies in that winning period for GWS as well. And I think this could continue. And I honestly see him as like the number 2 midfielder for GWS going forward. So
wow.
He's one,
okay.
Behind Tom Green eventually, you know what I mean? Like maybe not this season, but I think he's the kind of, of the future. He's the kind of next kind of person in there. He's one I really like going forward as well. I think Mason Redmond as well. We talked about McGrath before as well, but like, he's a player, just such a unique player. Like he's got that little bit of height, so we can take those intercept marks, things like that. But then he's also got that run and dash off that halfback flank as well. Like he'll always find a way to score, whether it's through intercepting or whether it's through attacking off that halfback line. So he's a player I really like that we've both ranked. Player I find interesting out of yours is Daniel Rioli. Do you think he's got another gear to get to? I know we're talking GameDay Squad rankings over AFL fantasy, but what's your thoughts there?
Yeah, I can definitely get into it. This is someone that I think I rank a lot highly than others, in all honesty. He's 26 years old, 93.5 fantasy average from 2023, entering his 9th season. So he isn't a baby anymore. And it's almost disappointing that I can't have Rioli higher, in all honesty. I'll go through some of his numbers for last year. For context, 11.5 kicks, 8.9 handballs, 4.2 marks, 3.4 tackles. They were his significant averages at least. Just for me, has the speed, the ability to take the game on, and he can just go crazy in terms of fantasy production. But I think it's a little bit of a Coleman situation where he can just go missing for long periods of time. And I think it really hurts his fantasy potential. He's lacked that consistency due to these reasons. This is a big concern and why he's at number 14. I'm bigger than Rioli at most, as I said, but I just think that he can deliver more on a week-to-week basis. And that I think his time's coming. Like, I'm either going to be proven right very soon over the next year or two, and it's going to be like, wow, that was great. You waited so long on Rioli to come through. Now he's fantastic. I don't see him being a top-tier defender ever, but I do see him being a really viable option in people's teams. We've got 7 defender spots throughout this season. There's going to be some weeks where people have some horrible matchups, and I feel like a player like Rioli can be a point-of-difference player people sub in, and it's going to help them get up on that leaderboard. So
he's a player I don't dislike. He's in our draft pool, so we keep 12. And he got put back in our league. So he's someone I'm actually considering with my first round draft pick going into that's my keeper league, not my dynasty league, but the one where we only keep 12 per year. My big concern at the moment, and this has more so just come to fruition after Sunday, is just like under the dimmer system, there was always one standout halfback flanker that scored pretty well. And I found last year when Short was injured and stuff like that, Rioli kind of stepped into this and kind of worked pretty well.
100%, yeah.
Under the Uze system, I've only seen one game, very small sample size. It looked far more attacking. It looked far less like trying to get the ball into the hands of like a halfback distributor. It looked more like, say, like a Port Adelaide style where it's just get it out of there as quickly as possible. Let's attack as quick as possible. Let's not stuff around with it anywhere near our defence type thing. And so that just fills me a bit of concern for probably him. And I know I've got Short a bit higher, but probably Short comes back in my rankings a little bit on the back of this, and who knows, we might come out next week and see a completely different shift or a different style against a different team, and they could have just been trying something new. It's hard to actually kind of go into it right now, and I think also as well with the Richmond game when I was watching, there wasn't a lot of points being kicked, so there wasn't a lot of kick-outs and things like that, so it was hard to get a gauge of. I think after 3/4 time there was only 3 behinds kicked or something like that, so it was hard to get a gauge of who was taking kick-outs and stuff like that as well. I don't know. With new coach, you're either confident of someone getting new opportunity, or you're kind of worried about someone's role changing a bit or the game plan changing a little bit. And that's probably more where I'm leaning towards at the moment for all Richmond defenders, really.
Fair call. I guess it's a bit of a you zig when everyone zags type of situation. And talking about kick-ins, that's going to be a significant factor if he is going to get to the next level. I think he was second behind Vlosten last year. He had a 93% play-on percentage, which means he gets that kick in terms of fantasy. So if he is going to ascend, get to that next level, it's definitely going to rely on getting a bit more of a role in regards to that. I guess another player I wanted to touch on here is Lachie Whitfield. He's 29 years old. I know you spoke of age, and I love the fact that you're given really good consideration into the win now aspect, because off the back of Newman, like he made our All-Star squad last year, so he was a top 7, top 6 defender in terms of fantasy output, and I don't see his role changing at all from this year. So if you're looking at a player to plug in now, the only reason I had him a little bit lower than yourself is just the age thing. Lachie Whitfield's that little bit younger. He was a midfielder last year. He's coming back into the defence. Had an average of 114.4, which would have put him as our D6 tied with Liam Duggan, which I think is very significant. He has 17 kicks per game average, 10 handballs, 5.8 marks. He's an elite ball user. He was taken very early in the draft, which seems like forever ago. I think this season for Lachie Whitfield has all-star squad written all over it, in my personal opinion. I think he's going to be a great win now player. If you're going to want someone to put in, have high output, I think Whitfield's the guy. I know we have Ash as well in here for us because you're talking about that midfield role. I think Lachie Whitfield, whether it's on the wing or off the halfback flank's got his role solidified with GWS, and he's going to have a good year as well. So I'm excited for him. I think he's going to be good in squads. Is he set and forget? Definitely not, but he's going to have some great weeks this week. He's going to help people win.
Yeah, I think he's probably around that 90, which probably gets closer to 95, 100 average guy in GameDay Squad. He's safe at that level, I think, but he is kind of plateauing in his scoring. My biggest concern with him mainly is, does he go up to a wing and lose his defender status? That's probably one of my bigger considerations with a player like him. At the moment, it seems pretty safe though. So yeah, I don't disagree. I think that he's definitely a player that can go that 90 mark again. It's just I find players like him just frustrating, like up and down, or since like 2018, 2019, where he's averaging like 100. I think he won 110 in 2019. Around that 100 mark in the COVID year, if you add on the 1.25 or whatever. And then we saw, a bit of a steady decline since then. It kind of plateaued last year, but I don't know. Pushing that 30 mark is not as nimble and as durable as he once was, but I don't know. But I could see it go. I can see him. Yeah. I can see him just as definitely averaging around that 90 mark, so it's pretty safe.
Yeah, love that, mate. And again, I reckon that sets us off quite nicely. We're getting into the pointy end of the rankings. I think we go 10-6, mate. Let's flick it over. I'll quickly check out yours. You check out mine. And let's have a quick discussion about it. You starting off?
I think...
Short. Housten. I'm surprised you have Housten this early, I guess, in a sense.
Yeah, I don't know. Neither here nor, you mean not higher, or...
Yeah, for sure. I think if you compare him to someone like Newman, I think he's good. He's ready to go. You can see he's not in my 5 right now, so we'll wait a little bit for at least
he must be up there.
Take on it. But what about yourself, mate? I reckon you take it away. What's your thoughts on Housten, the season he's about to have?
Again, for me, it's system-based. Port aren't a very fantasy-friendly team for defenders.
Sound like Ken 10, Ken 11, sorry.
Absolutely not. I think most of my listeners know my thoughts. We won't go there. From someone who has been a member for, I've been a member since about 98, 99, around then. So, I've seen a lot of players, coaches come and go, which I think differs some people's opinions that have jumped on a lot later. But anyway, Dan Housten, very system-based. Now, the big question is, where does he play? Does he play on a wing? Because we've lost Dersmar, we've lost Bonner as someone else comes in. Ollie Wines was playing on the wing a fair bit last year, but he's been tipped to go in the midfield. So where does Willem Drew go on the back of that? Dan Housten's someone I could see up on the wing, and the wing is a fair graveyard for fantasy scoring this year. The other thing is as well, that halfback role, but the thing is Housten's probably one of the better ones, and when he does go up to that wing, he seems to average a bit more. He does get centre bounces as well, which is interesting as well, because he seems to score a bit better when he gets those as well. So that's probably some of my consideration, just also with Port just not ever being a fantasy-friendly team. Not for defenders anyway. Seeing so many players go backwards. We saw, Ryan Burton being a pretty solid, stable type of player to, I think he only averaged in the 60s last year. I think the trend in footy is quicker ball movement, more attacking. Ever since we've had the 6-6-6 and a few other different rule changes, the more successful teams are starting to get quicker and quicker. And I think that just affects fantasy scoring. So, you look on the flip side, someone like St Kilda, who weren't very quick at all, playing, Ross Lyon style football, probably one of the better fantasy averaging sides. So it kind of just stems from that a little bit. I'm sure that argument you could pick holes in many of my selections on the back of it because I haven't put heaps of consideration in. And I'm probably harsher on Port Adelaide players being a Port Adelaide fan and not being that happy with the current regime as well. So probably factors in a little bit. But that's just my thoughts on Housten.
Yeah, fair call, mate. Fair call. I wanted to highlight a player because I can't see them in your list so far, and I almost can guarantee they are in your list, which just means you have them ranked a little bit higher than me. This is going to be Nasiah Wanganeen-Milera. At least I'm hoping you didn't miss that. I'm sure you didn't. 20 years old, 110 average from last year. I'm excited to break this one down. I'm huge on Nasiah Wanganeen-Milera for 2024 and beyond, and I did hint at that in the draft as well when Cam selected him. I was spewing 17.5 kicks, 6.3 marks. He led the Saints in kick-ins last season, 81% play-on percentage, which honestly isn't great. If he could lift that a little bit higher, we could see an extra 4 points. You get kicks in GameDay Squad, add that on top of his average per game, and I think he just gets to another level in terms of output. That, again, would put him essentially tied at D6 for last year, just with the 4 points. So his numbers are fantastic. He's the second youngest player on my list. Sinclair could be getting some more midfield time. What does that mean for Nasiah Wanganeen-Milera? I think it means more fantasy points. The only reason that I don't have Nasiah Wanganeen-Milera a little bit higher or inside of my top 5 is just the fact that Sinclair is still around and he's in his prime right now. So this is going to slightly just limit his fantasy potential for now, but this is no concern, at least in my opinion. He's 20 years old and he's got a chance to, we have the chance to watch a genuine phenom learn and grow off one of the best in the business in Jack Sinclair. So I think that's just going to lead to even better things later on in his career. Just right now, he's still going to be great, but I think that he's one of the players that I'm looking at that he's going to be in a top 6 later on in his career for defenders.
No secrets. No, sorry for spoiling the next tier, but I've got him in my top 5 with ease. Yep. So there's a few factors that I like about him going forward. There's a few factors that I don't like about him in this season, but essentially there's heaps of things I can talk about. So St Kilda have recruited so many outside players in the last year or so. So players like the wings I found at St Kilda were quite deficient over the last few years. Players like Ryan Burns playing pretty regularly on there, not really contributing much. Mason Wood, played last year and was outstanding, but he's 31. Do I see him as a future? They've gone pretty hard. Liam Henry, I think there's someone else. One of their draftees was as an outside type as well. I can't remember his name, but so they've gone pretty hard there. So that's good for Nasiah Wanganeen-Milera because he's going to be pushing back into defence and he's going to be staying in defence, because he's such a classy outside mover that I wouldn't be surprised if they were to utilise him as a wing, and that sucks for fantasy. But he's that kind of playmaker off that halfback flank. And you look at him, he's just so classy, silky smooth. He hits kicks that no one else can hit as well, or very few people in the competition can as well. So he's a player that they're going to want the ball in their hands. Now, for this season, interestingly, their midfield has beefed up maybe a little bit. Well, they picked up Paddy Dow, and I think they've picked him up to kind of play a role to kind of free up Jack Steele from some of that contested stuff and things like that. But that's another person to go in there. Does that mean someone like Jack Sinclair spends less time in the midfield because he spent a lot of time in there last year? Does he push back into defence? Does he hurt Nasiah's scoring, a little bit in terms of progression? I'm not sure if Nasiah plateaus a little bit. I did a heap of research on first year breakouts, second year breakouts, third year breakouts, and what type of players typically break out in second year compared to third year and how they go after that, essentially. So second year players, not many players actually do break out in the second year, and what I typify as a breakout is someone who averages over 80 in one of their first 3 seasons. When they average over 80 for the season, that's their kind of breakout year in my book. Some people kind of classify it as their biggest increase in scoring, but I don't think you're really that kind of classic kind of fantasy relevant until you hit that 80 mark. So Nasiah is one of the rare people. There was only maybe 20 or so out of the 780 odd players in the AFL that had averaged 80 in their second year. And then typically what happens after that, the players that do it plateau the next year. They don't kind of push that next mark until a bit later on into their career. So few factors there, like Sinclair maybe coming back, playing more defence, less midfield, plus the fact that traditionally players that see this bump tend to go sideways a bit, could factor in. But I think long term, he's not losing that defender status. He's going to just be a gun of the future. He's such a classy user that there's no way he can't be a good user of the ball, a good fantasy player as a result, because the ball's going to be in his hands. Yeah.
Nah, spot on, mate. Spot on. And it's funny because we're nitpicking here, trying to find reasons to distinguish why he might not have a good season. And he's in your top 5. So I think that's a testament to how good he truly is, that if it's not looking too fantastic in 2024, you must be that huge on 2024 and beyond, essentially, for him. One last player I want to touch on, at least for me, is Luke Ryan. I think last year he exploded onto the scene. 120.7 fantasy average, 27 years old. Now, that's the type of score we're talking about. It's the highest, at least so far, from the players that I've touched on. 19.6 kicks per game, which is insane. 8.2 marks, and they're the 2 massive stat indicators that he has. He's just serving as the team's kick-in player as well, which is huge for a defender. 92% play-on percentage, so it's just extra points you're getting on top. That's essentially 20 kicks per game, as I said, over an entire season. Just yes, please. Your fantasy floor in terms of scoring is so high just from that stat alone. There's word of Hayden Young going into the mids, which I find funny because we both haven't showed Hayden Young yet. So I think that's another player we're about to touch on each. But I think that just means less competition for ball in the defender group, and Ryan gets it more. He sits as the anchor for Freo, so you'll see quite commonly in Fremantle games, they'll just swing it from pocket to pocket, wing to wing, and he'll just be that link-up player that sits deep. No one's on him. They'll just press him late as the opposition, but it's just essentially a mark and a kick every time. So I could personally watch that all day, at least when I've started him in my defending group. So just heaps of uncontested possessions for him. I think 2024 is just going to be much of the same. I don't think he's going to have a leap in terms of scoring production. We might see it actually regress just a little bit because there was a lot of ball in Freo's defenders group last year. So he did get his hands on the footy quite often, but I think he's building off a fantastic 2023 campaign, and he might even just feature in our All-Star squad again. So he cracked that mark last year, and I think he's destined to do it again this year. He just had such a great year. So get him in your lineup for sure. You need him in your squad.
Yeah, when he's up and running, the ceiling is immense, and that's why I've got him up as high. He's had an injury-interrupted preseason, though, so that's just kind of one little concern. They reckon he'll be back playing by next week, but it just depends how much their fitness has been impacted. For example, we saw a player like Ollie Wines have a pretty injury-interrupted preseason last year, and it was his lowest average since his first season type thing. So it can affect people, so that's something I am wary of. But Fremantle, very, very fantasy-friendly side in the way that they use the ball. Probably to their detriment, as they don't win very many games. Well, they didn't win many games last year. And their fans at the moment are baying for blood. And I just wouldn't be surprised if we might see some sort of coaching change, perhaps not even before the end of the year, which means we might see a difference in the way they play as well. But for now, he's looking pretty good.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. But, mate, I think it's time. Let's get into it. The 1 to 5s, what everyone has been waiting for. Who do we rank the highest for our defenders Dynasty rankings in 2024? Let's flick it over. Let's have a quick look, and then we can talk about some of the players. There's Hayden Young, number 5 for both. Love it. Sinclair, number 2. Wow. Sicily around the same mark, and of course, number 1. No surprises there. Is there anyone that you wanted to touch on in particular in this line group and talk about?
So you had Sinclair 6. Yeah. The main one really is now it's some pretty fresh news. So it's in the last 24 hours. But James Sicily now has no other tall defender in their defense. So I had a debutant on the podcast last night, Geordie DeSena, who did a bit of deep dives onto James Sicily's numbers with James Blank in the side and without him, and Sicily's numbers dipped without James Blank in the side. So now obviously James Blank's out for the season. So there's a little bit of a concern there. Then there was this comment that Sicily came out yesterday saying, I don't defend. I rely on other people to do defending. That's not my job. Then this morning, Denver Grange Brass has come out with an injury as well. So I'm finding it very hard to see who's going to go back there and play those lockdown roles. I'm a bit concerned about Sicily. If I was to re-rank these today, he probably drops down a few rungs for mine. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see. So we both got him very high. I think I've got him 3 and you've got him 2.
2. So
but
top 3.
Would that affect your ranking of him?
I have seen this. It's definitely a concern for sure. Like, his ceiling last year was just enormous. Out of my list, he has the second highest average from 2023, other than Nick Dacos at number 1. So the fantasy potential is there, but I agree. I saw this as well. And it's true because he likes to play off his man. Commonly, you will see him come up as the third man up, get an intercept mark, and then that's a mark. That's a kick when he kicks the ball as well. So it is a concern. What is his fantasy potential going to be? I'm not exactly sure. If I did do it again, maybe he does slide down a little bit. But I just think in that system, in that team, they're going to need to rely on their captain, James Sicily, to step up. It might be a bit of a rough year for Hawthorn. They've got some new acquisitions at the club. They're trying to do the right thing, but the ball's going to be down there a lot. He should be taking the kick-ins as well. I just think James Sicily will still have a good fantasy season. Will he rank as high as last year? I think that's the question that I think you're asking as well. Probably not.
Yeah, and we just see him go missing in a few games, and he does drop the head a little bit every now and then, old James Sicily as well. So, yeah, I'm just a bit concerned now that news has come out. I just cannot see where their lockdown defenders, their key defenders stocks come from without him doing more of a prominent job. Yeah. And then I think also as well, like, Carl Amon's tipped to go back there, and like I can see him just being like the main distributor out of halfback type thing as well. So like that might just take a few. I know their avenues to scoring is a little bit different, but I think that might just take a few points off the defence now as well. So yeah, that news that's come out just like in literally the last 24 hours before we kind of put this together, after we put this together, is come out now. The other one for me, like, I like where you've got Sheezel now. My ranks were very much before the intra-club and before we saw that him going back to that halfback flank. So now he's like, my concern is like, I'm not concerned about midfield time at all. Everyone's like, he's going to play in the midfield. That sucks because he's not getting the halfback role. No way. Like, that's great for his fantasy. My point is the forward rotation. He was such a gun forward as a junior. No one can really kick goals apart from Nick Lachie in there as well. Big Suva. So like, I don't know, like, I feel like they're just going to, and maybe Zane Dersma can step up and do something, but like, I feel like playing him across that halfback takes away from what he does best in his own game. Whereas you could stick a McCurdy or a Fisher on a halfback line, and I reckon you'd get similar results. Whereas I reckon if you put Sheezel in front of goals, you're going to get like probably someone more magical than like Isaac Rankin, or as good as Josh Rioli is going to be, or that sort of stuff, and more damaging on the scoreboard sort of thing as well. So, like, if I'm coaching, like, I'm not chucking a guy with that kind of flair in front of goal on the halfback flank for the sake of him getting heaps of fantasy touches for the fantasy coaches out there. Like, it's just not the way I would do it. But I'm not Alistair Clarkson, and I haven't won 4 premierships, and he probably knows something more than I do. So
you've won a couple flags. You were saying in fantasy, so
Yeah. I've got a few here and there, but not the same realm, I don't think. So I don't know. But now, like, seeing that intra club, I'm more happy. I did have communication. I had a beer with someone who is on the North Melbourne coaching staff a few weeks ago, and he did tell me that Sheezel was playing midfield this year. He said that was true. But again, like, I don't know how much, if I work for North Melbourne, I would give away to a mate, or even like more so a loose acquaintance, because I'm mates with his brother more than anything. Like, I'm not sure how much I would actually give away, like, if my job was on the line, or like my credibility was on the line as well. I would probably feed people a bit of shit too. And also a lot's changed since then. Like, Fisher, that was before Fisher did his hamstring and stuff like that. So there might be some switch of your tactics there and stuff as well. So yeah,
couple courage beers stirring the pot.
Yeah, well, yeah. I probably should have asked more fantasy questions from North, because I went there not intending to talk fantasy. I went there not intending to talk fantasy, and then it ended up coming out. But he kind of gave the indication that when he found out I do fantasy stuff, he was like, "All right, well, I'll give you a bit." So, yeah,
how good is that? That's always seems to be the case. You don't plan on talking about fantasy in a night out, and then you 100%. End up talking through your rankings for the next 4 years. So love it. For me with Sheezel, just age 19, phenom, 114 average last year. I actually think he plays, as you said, better in the defence in terms of fantasy output, but I do understand your point. He would be a better forward. playing. Just the skill set, the way he plays, it would be better. I think a big thing for me this year, if he is going to play off the halfback and in the mids, is that Jack Siebel has just retired, leading kick-in player last season. Sheezel came in at number 2, so I'm presuming that he might even step up into that role if it's possible, but who knows. He had an 88% kick-on percentage or play-on percentage last year, and that's only with 66 kicks. So what could that number get to? What could his average get to? I think it's a massive indicator. When you're looking at defenders and their output, kick-ins are just such an easy way to score because you don't even really need to do anything. You just pick up the ball and run out the box and bang, 4 points, even if it's a turnover. So, it's just such a good way to do it. But, yeah, I see your point. Sheezel, he's just too young for me, though. Had to crack my top 3 just because I think it's a card you want to get. But, mate, I do want to talk about one other player in this range, and that's going to be Hayden Young. We spoke about Luke Ryan before. Hayden Young, 22 years old, 105.4 fantasy average. Some of the key stats: 14.7 kicks, 7.7 handballs, 4.8 marks, 3.9 tackles. So he does a little bit of everything, and he does it quite consistently as well. Do you want to talk about why you have Hayden Young cracking your top 5 this year? Because if you look at his average of 105.4, it's not that tasty, especially compared to some of the other players on this list. Why is he so high for you? What do you see for 2024 and beyond?
Oh, I think we just see a continuation of what happened at the end of last year. Over the last 4 or 5 rounds, I think it was, went into the midfield, became a star in there, really. And I just see it happening going forward. Like, it's all the talk has been happening. And like, you see it happen, a bit throughout careers, or see players like Connor Rosie, who everyone thought he'd be a forward going forward, but he just has that class and that skill set to go into the midfield. I feel like I always reference Port Adelaide players. I swear I know more players than that, given I do a Dynasty podcast. But anyway, like players like him that go into the midfield and have that skill set to actually be something more and play in probably the most important position on the ground. He's just one of those players. Like, the only reason I've got him lower than probably the 4 ahead of him is just Nick Dacos is probably a no-brainer, but is the fact that I just think he'll lose defender status, and that's the kind of biggest 100%. Factor for me when I'm thinking about Dynasty stuff. It just, I think he averages more than Nasiah, Wanganeen-Milera next season. I think now he probably averages more than Sicily, or on par with. I could potentially see a world if I was just basing it on his output alone over the next few years, having him second behind Nick Dacos. But yeah, just the fact that we're ranking defenders and we want defenders for the future doesn't really stop us putting Nick Dacos at number 1, but we just think he was going to be the best player in the competition by a mile for the next 10 years. So it doesn't really matter where you pick him then.
Yeah, exactly right. No, and I love the analysis. Opportunity equals production when you're in the midfield. You get more opportunities to get to play alongside Andy Brayshaw, Caleb Sarong. Just wow is my first thought, and second is just, as you mentioned, the position change. But at least 4 now, similar to last year with Jordan Dawson being a defender in GameDay Squad. Hayden Young, for me, is going to quickly become that player this season that if you don't have him in your squad for the season, then you're already going to be at a disadvantage to all of those who do. I think it's just plain, it's simple. He's in for a monster year. And, wow. You need to get a Hayden Young card if you don't have one for GameDay Squad, that's for sure.
Definitely.
And I guess Nick Dacos, on top of your list, on top of both of our lists. I don't even think we need to talk about him, as you said. He's just too good. He's just going to be there forever. But, mate, I do want you to talk about one more player in your list. Then we can wrap it all up. Is Jack Sinclair. I had him a little bit lower than you. I had him at 6. He was monstrous last year. He was so good. He is getting a little bit older. He's at 28, but why is Jack Sinclair the D2 for you right now?
Essentially, goes into the midfield enough, boosts his numbers that way. But he's just in the most fantasy-friendly system in the competition at the moment, being St Kilda, playing under that old school Ross Lyon game plan, which is high possession type thing, keeping the footy off the opposition, that sort of stuff as well. So he's up there. Plus, I don't know, just some magical, watching him closely last year, and just some magical games where he pushed some huge numbers. Absolutely buried me in one game, I think, as well, where he put up, I think it was against GWS, where he put up like a 130 or 140, and my opposition had the captain on him as well. So I watched him very close that day, and definitely fell in love with the way he played, though. That sort of stuff as well. So, I just think like if you can't, I just don't see him going backwards from last year and in that system as well. And like he might even spend less time in the midfield, which might not be the worst thing for him as well. Like if he can just mop up across halfback and get involved in that kind of switch and that outlet kick and stuff like that. Like I think he, when I look at James Sicily, when I look at Naz, Wanganeen-Milera, when I look at Hayden Young, like Hayden Young's probably the only one I see with more upside, but again, he's going to lose defender status. So yeah, yep. I see him the one that kind of maintains what he did last year at the very minimum, with maybe some upside if things go his way as well. So that's why he's up there for me.
Mate, absolutely love it. That is our top 20 Dynasty Defender rankings for 2024. All wrapped up, mate. That was a bit of fun. First of all, thank you so much for coming on the channel, chopping it up with me, talking about the Defender rankings. Of course, you are from the Keeper League. I've got all of your links down below in the description. But I know one thing that's new this year is your draft simulator. Do you want to quickly talk about that? What is that and how can people use it?
Yeah, well, there's a couple mock drafts, or there's one out there, the Draft Doctors one, which is an amazing tool and I use it all the time. But there wasn't really anything out there for keeper leagues. So that is when you're practicing your drafting, when you're mock drafting, preferencing younger players or the next 3 to 5 years type thing, as opposed to just the single season rankings of players. So the algorithm behind the scenes looks more at age, career averaging as well. So like if people are dropping down 1 year, they're going to come back and that sort of stuff. And just kind of future potential and things like that, and injuries and stuff like that. So it kind of looks at all that sort of stuff and calculates like some draft rankings on the back of that, and then you can kind of pick your own players and rank up against it. I think the most crucial factor, and I think people underestimate how crucial it is the ADP data, the average draft position data.
100%.
So a lot of mock drafts don't put this out like outwards, or it's only in the table. Like we made a big focus on just you being able to just look at it. It's there in front of you. You can search it, you can filter it, that sort of stuff as well. Because what it does is like, I know that like in keeper leagues, they're all unique shapes and sizes, and the mock draft setup might not perfectly tailor to your league, but it does. The ADP data gives you an assessment of where the common player is ranking a player and where they're likely to go in a draft. So when you're doing your draft rankings or whatever, if you use this as a guide, you can take out all the players, the keepers that are gone or whatever from your league and stuff like that. But then you can look at, all right, this guy's generally going to go in the first round of our draft because that's where his kind of average draft pick equivalent is, type thing. So yeah, it's just a good way to kind of, for me, it's a data collection tool, more so than to practice your draft. But to give people an insight of what their opponents who, if they are drafting against the common man or whatever, might do on draft day. So that's the kind of way I look at it. So yeah, you can check that out at keepleaguepod.com.au if you're interested. There's a demo version up there, and then you can sign up as a member and support the show and get access to the full version if you're keen to use it more.
Yes, you bloody can. Again, all the links are down below in the description. Just click the link there. That'll take you to all of that good stuff. Heff, before I let you run, I already said thank you. I want some couple predictions for the season. I'm going to rapid fire some questions at you. You're going to let me know, first of all, who's winning the flag?
Ooh, I think Brisbane are going to do it, to be honest. I think they'll go one better. They'll learn from last year, and it's their kind of time to shine. Who
will be the highest fantasy scorer for the season and take out the crown?
I'm hoping for my sake it's going to be Andrew Brayshaw under that Freo system. Sarong getting all the tags this year. Hopefully that's the case.
Biggest riser of a team from 2023?
Ooh, I would have said Hawthorn, given some of the kids they've gone through. A few injuries now, but I'll stick with it. Hawthorn might surprise a few.
Alrighty, and last one. The biggest faller of a team from 2023?
I'm going to go with Port Adelaide, hopefully. And then we might see a new coach there. So wishful thinking, maybe.
Oh, it's like deja vu. I just did a recording with Callum yesterday and he literally said the same thing. You guys are on the exact same wavelength. Yeah, thank you so much for your time again, and to all the viewers. Smash a like, subscribe to the channel, go check out all I have stuff, and we'll catch you all in the next episode where we give you our forwards rankings. See you, everyone.